So our next topic we are having that is after the sound of heartbeat we are having the blood pressure. What is blood pressure in actual? It is a measure of force of blood that is exerted against the walls of arteries. That point will be clear, more clear after some points. With the help of diagram I will tell you. Or you can say that the ventricles basically contract. We are having the heart chambers, right atrium, left atrium, right ventricle and left ventricle. When these both will contract, so the blood pressure will generate okay, blood pressure will be generate. So pressure generate or detect by a pumping organ, that is heart. Okay, so if you talk about the importance, so the blood pressure is basically maintain the blood flow. Blood pressure basically maintain the blood flow. Okay, so the pressure will get reduced when the flow will getting low. For example, there is a pressure, so here the pressure will be more as compared to here. Okay, from for example I'm like there is a water and I'm like moving from the water is moving from here this, so here the pressure will be more, but as compared to this the pressure will be less. So if you talk about the blood pressure, so blood pressure is like that. Okay, so the if you talk about the highest pressure that I've given you the example of this water, so the highest pressure, so from the right ventricle and left ventricle there is aorta. After that we are having the arteries. After that we are having the, you can say that the arterioles, and after that we are having the capillaries. So the blood, as you guys all know, we are having the left, from the left atrium the blood will move toward the aorta, then arteries, then arterioles. So as compared to aorta, this is having the highest pressure. Okay, because the blood will move from ventricle to the aorta, then to other things, then the first priority is aorta. So that's why there the pressure will be high. So we are detecting the pressure by a sphygmomanometer. This is a pressure instrument through which we detect the pressure. So we are having a thing that is ventricular systole. What does it mean? We are also calling that as a normal systole of the blood pressure. Okay, so here the basically the ventricle will get contract. These both ventricle will get contract. So the blood will move toward the aorta, blood to aorta. So the pressure, if we talk about in the aorta, so that will be the 12 mm of mercury. Okay, after then from aorta to further vessels. Okay, so the blood pressure in the pressure will be from 12 mm of the hd. This is basically the normal systolic value of the blood pressure. Okay, after that we are having one more thing, that is basically a next thing we are having, that is diastolic ventricular. Diastolic. In this the ventricle will get relaxed. Relaxed. Okay, so here the no pressure will generate because the ventricles are relaxed. So how the pressure will generate? If the ventricle will contract, then the pressure will be generated. That's the point. But if the ventricle will not contract, so how the pressure will generate? So the no pressure will be generated. So the pressure will get reduced by 80 mm of Hg. Okay, so we are measuring the blood pressure. Let me give you the example that we are measuring the blood pressure from the left arm of the upper side. Why from the upper side? Because this is closest to the heart. Okay, why we are not using the, you can sphygmomanometer for the blood, for the checking of the blood pressure on the thighs? Why? So there the pressure is basically reduced. If we talk about the arm, so here this is closest to the heart. Why we are not checking the blood pressure in the right arm? Why? Because there is no heart, but our heart is on left side, so that's why we are checking the blood pressure through the left arm. So on left arm the pressure is more. Okay, likewise you can take the example of the aorta too. So we are checking the blood pressure to the left arm. So this was about the blood pressure. Okay, after that let me tell you about a little bit about pulse into this video. What is pulse? Here for example the pressure is more, force will be more, force is more. Okay, pressure is more, force is more. So here the arteries will get wider because of the pressure. So arteries is basically, as you guys all know, arteries are having elasticity, so that can be wider. So the wider of the arteries, we are calling that as the vasodilation. If there is less pressure, less force, so the arteries will be getting narrow artery. We are calling that as a narrow arteries. We are calling that as a vasoconstriction. So the constriction. So the changing in the structure of the arteries, wider and narrow, we are calling vasodilation and vasoconstriction. So these both will be like, is called the pulse. The changing in the structure of the arteries, we are calling the both as a pulse. Okay, let me tell you about the pressure gradient. What is pressure gradient? Pressure gradient is basically a pressure on capillaries. This is basically applicable to the aorta to the capillaries. Aorta to the capillaries. From the higher concentration to the lower concentration. For example, from the ventricle will contract, the blood will move toward the aorta, then arteries, then arteriole, then capillaries. Okay, as you guys all know, the ventricle contracts, so the pressure will be high in the aorta, high pressure or high concentration. If we talk about the capillaries, so capillaries will be having a less pressure or low concentration. And here, as you guys all know, between arteries and the capillaries, we are having no pumping organ. So that's why their pressure is less. If we talk about the pressure in veins, so as you guys all know, the veins were having no pressure, but just because of the surrounding muscles, the pressure was generated. Surrounding muscles, which muscles? We were having the skeletal muscles and sometimes smooth muscles too. These are basically the surrounding muscles around the vein. So vein is having no pressure, but from the surrounding muscles, the pressure is basically generated. So but that we are not detecting, because, and this, as you guys all know, the pressure of the veins is basically the backward flow of the blood is controlled by the semilunar valve, as you guys all know. So the vein will be having the highest pressure. After that we will be having a venules, and then capillaries. So the capillaries will be having a less pressure, then veins will be having a more pressure, like aorta. Okay, so this was the pressure gradient. So anyways, I'm sure that you have understand about the how blood pressure. So this is about the blood pressure. So we are having normal pulse rate, that is basically 70 maybe, but you can check it out. Okay, and if we talk about the normal blood pressure, so we are having the 120, we are considering as a you can say 80 to 120, 80 to 120. Okay, and if the blood pressure is above 120, we are calling that as a high blood pressure, and if the blood pressure is less than 80, we are calling that as a low blood pressure. Okay, so this was about the blood pressure.